Hey everyone, welcome back. So, I want you to picture this. You're standing right in the heart of East Jakarta, and looming over you is this massive 28-story monolith, Menara Saidah. It used to be this gleaming symbol of progress, right? A totally bustling business hub. But now it's just silent, utterly abandoned and wrapped in this really heavy aura of dread. I'm going to be your local investigative guide today as we do a deep dive into Menara Saidah. We're going to sift through the facts, the myths, and the 28-story mystery to figure out what actually turned this place into Indonesia's most infamous abandoned building. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so before we even step foot inside, we've got to talk about the warning. The locals whisper a chilling phrase to basically anyone foolish enough to get too close. It translates to, if you enter without good intentions, you might not be able to leave. Yeah, not exactly a warm welcome, right? But it really sets the stakes for what we're looking at today. Because people don't just feel creeped out here. They genuinely report feeling physically and psychologically trapped.
But before we get completely lost in the dark, let's look at the blueprint and actually ground this mystery in some reality. Because, Menara Saidah wasn't always this decaying shell. It all started back in 1984, driven by the grand vision of its founder, Ibu Saidah. And for over a decade, the place was alive. Bright lights, packed offices, the whole shebang. But then, 1997 happened. The Asian financial crisis absolutely wrecked the economy, and tenants started going bankrupt left and right. And to make matters worse, like way worse, engineers found out the building's foundation was actually tilting. It was structurally unsafe. But here's the crazy part. Right as the final tenants packed up and the physical maintenance completely stopped, the ghost stories just flooded in. It's like the moment the living people left, the unexplained totally took over. So we're left looking at two completely different stories. On the one hand, you have the official, stamped by engineers reason for the building's death. Economic collapse and severe structural tilt. Makes perfect sense. But on the flip side, you have the myths that have completely swallowed the public's imagination. You hear rumors that it was built on cursed land, maybe even an old mass grave. Or, my personal favorite, that the restless spirit of Ibu Saidah herself just refuses to let go of her prized building. Okay, so what actually happens when you cross that threshold? Let's take the descent into the anomalies and encounters. All right, get a load of this story. Right after the building started emptying out, there was this night guard. He's doing his rounds and spots a light on in one of the upper floor offices, so he heads up to check it out. He peeks through a cracked door and sees this elegant woman wearing glasses just meticulously sorting through files at a desk. He politely says, "Excuse me, ma'am, still working this late?" She doesn't even turn around, doesn't even flinch. She just softly replies, "I haven't finished working yet." Now, the next morning he reports this, and his coworkers are absolutely horrified. Why? Because that floor had been empty for months. And the woman he described, it was a dead ringer for the late owner, Ibu Saidah. Needless to say, that guard never worked a night shift again. But it gets worse, a lot more physical. You've probably heard of the infamous elevator incident. A group of kids broke in, looking for a thrill. Well, as they got near the broken elevator shafts, the temperature just literally dropped like a rock. First, they hear the pitter-patter of a kid running right behind them. They spin around, totally empty. Then, echoing down this pitch-black hallway, they hear a woman crying out a name in pure agony. They panicked and sprinted out of there. But here is the wildest part. When they got outside under the streetlights, one of the teens realized he had these deep, unexplained red scratch marks, literally like claw marks, running right down the back of his jacket. And listen, it isn't just a bunch of spooked teenagers saying this stuff. A legitimate supernatural research team actually went in and set up their gear on the 15th floor. Their meters went absolutely off the charts. But the real kicker was the audio they recorded. They picked up this incredibly sad but very firm woman's voice demanding, "Get out, don't be here." And the moment that recording saved, every single piece of equipment they brought, cameras, recorders, everything, completely died at the exact same time. No way to explain it. Now, if you map out these encounters, you'll see they aren't just random. So, let's look at the real danger zones. According to the local lore, you've got some very specific hotspots.
Floor 4 is notorious for this overwhelming metallic smell. Explorers describe it as smelling like blood or decay, basically making it the strongest energy center in the whole tower. Then jump up to floor 12. That is the domain of the White Lady. People constantly report seeing an apparition just staring out the giant windows. Oh, and time matters too. If you're crazy enough to be near there at 3 a.m., the witching hour, people say the ambient noise, like even the sound of the wind, just stops. Total dead silence, followed immediately by slamming doors and shadows moving way too fast. But honestly, the most mind-bending anomaly of all boils down to the number 7. This is the whole missing time phenomenon, and it's terrifying. One urban explorer went inside to poke around. He checked his watch at 10 p.m. on the dot. He felt super uneasy, so he figured he was in there for maybe 15 minutes tops before walking back out to the street. But when he stepped through the gates, the sun was coming up. It was 5 a.m. 7 actual hours had completely vanished from his life, and he had literally zero memory of what he was doing in the dark all that time. Just gone.
And that brings us to these spatial anomalies, like the endless stairs. Picture this. A young guy's up on the 10th floor, gets understandably freaked out, and decides to just take the stairs down to the lobby and get out. He runs down a bunch of flights, expecting to hit the ground floor, right? He opens the door to check where he is, and the sign says floor 12. He panics, obviously, and starts running down faster and faster. Checks the next door, floor 14. It was like he was stuck on some kind of nightmare treadmill. And to make it even worse, he swore he felt unseen hands actually grabbing the bottom of his shirt, pulling upward, trying to physically stop him from leaving.
All right, let's take a breath. As your objective guide for this explainer, we really have to look at the rational factors versus the unexplained. On the logical side, it's an old, decaying skyscraper. The wind howling through shattered glass, yeah, that can definitely sound like someone crying. Extreme darkness will absolutely play tricks on your eyes. But what about the other side? How do you rationally explain 7 missing hours? Or full batteries draining to 0 instantly? Or physical claw marks on a jacket? Well, science does throw us a bone here with something called environmental psychology. This is basically the study of how our brains react to spaces. And our brains absolutely hate dark, dusty, isolating, decaying places. The sensory deprivation, combined with that primal anxiety of being in a building that's literally tilting, it causes our brains to overcompensate. We start manufacturing auditory and visual illusions just to cope. It's a survival mechanism gone totally haywire. So those shadows and whispers, very likely just biology reacting to a terrifying environment. But yeah, environmental psychology doesn't exactly explain why your flashlight battery drops from 100 to 0 in 10 seconds flat. So because we've got this insane mix of structural danger and, well, whatever else is happening in there, we have to talk about urban explorer safety. Here is the tour guide's warning. If you're ever near the building, here are the actual survival protocols the locals swear by. Step 1. If you hear footsteps or someone calling your name behind you, never look back. The lore says you'll get paralyzed by fear or hypnotized into staying. Step 2. Expect total battery drain. Do not rely on your phone for a flashlight or a map because it'll likely shut off the second you walk in. And step 3, literally the most important one, just observe from outside the gates. The safest way to experience Menara Saidah is from a very safe distance. Even folks just walking on the sidewalk say there's cell service drops near the entrance. So do yourselves a favor and respect the boundary. So what does this all mean? We're at the end of our little tour, but we're left with this massive question. Are all these encounters, the White Lady, the endless stairs, the phantom scratches, are they just the psychological tricks of a dark, tilted, decaying building? Or is something unseen, maybe the fiercely protective spirit of its creator, truly guarding the 28 floors of Menara Saidah? I really want to know what you guys think. Have you ever been in an abandoned place that felt like it was actively watching you? Think about it. Stay curious, explorers, and I'll catch you in our next deep dive.